What is programmatic advertising?
Programmatic advertising is literally just like highly targeted advertising within your customer persona. So it's not just like spray and pray advertising. It's just highly targeted advertising on TV, radio, native advertising, display advertising, and video advertising. Let's look at the ad spend holistically versus a siloed approach, because sometimes clients will come to us and they'll be like, should we run paid search or should we run programmatic? And we're like, well, actually, we recommend that you run both because they affect each other. So I'm really hoping that marketers move more towards this holistic approach. A lot of times what happens is they'll only run budget at the bottom of the funnel and they're struggling to gain market share or they're struggling to grow. And that's because they're not hitting those net new users. It's just important, especially if you're paying like the higher amounts for TV spend, to just make sure you're really, really targeting the right customer. And then they'll hear that message and be like, oh my gosh, like I am in the real estate investment audience. And, like that really speaks to me,
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Digital Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Eli Adams. Today's episode is brought to you by fireusmarketing.com, where SEO solutions pave the way to digital excellence. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode where we are joined by Jessica Chase. Jessica is a mom of 3 and happily married to her husband of 16 years. She is passionate about programmatic advertising and multi-touch attribution and runs the programmatic agency getabovethefold.com. She's been working in marketing and advertising for 20 years across the client side, the agency side, and the publisher side of the advertising business. On a personal note, she enjoys reading, traveling, journaling, meditation, and anything having to do with hanging out with her family. Welcome to the show, Jessica.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, so today is a special show. This is one of the shows that when the audience is listening to this, it'll be March, which is Women Appreciation Month. So I am super excited to have you on the show and show all of those women out there, especially I have 3 daughters and I want them to come and listen to the shows at some point in their life and look at all of the awesome women in digital that I got to interview. So it's a privilege and an honor to be able to interview you today. And I'm excited to have you on the show.
Oh yeah. I'm totally passionate about helping women in tech. And so I'm humbled to even fill that space. But if anybody needs help, especially women, I'm here to assist or mentor or whatever they need.
At the end of the show, we'll get all of your contact info so they know how to get in touch with you, and that's a generous offer. So, okay, so let's dive in. Who is Jessica? Where'd you grow up? What are some fun things you did as a kid? Yeah, tell us about some life lessons you learned. Let's dig in to see who you really are before you got into this agency life. Who was Jessica?
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in Utah, originally from Cottonwood Heights area. And when I first was little, I wanted to be an OBGYN back then. That was in first grade. So I had kind of big goals for myself, even when I was
sick. As a first grader, holy cow.
I drew a picture of delivering a baby. I bet you can imagine how much my parents loved that picture.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was like, oh, being a doctor would be amazing. Bringing babies into the world would be amazing. I think my brother was born around that time, so I thought that would be really cool. And then I moved to Sandy around 7 years old and lived there until I graduated high school, went out to high school. I had dreams of being a basketball player. I tried out for the Alta High basketball team and made it. But nice. I had a pretty severe accident over the summer between junior high and high school that kind of changed the trajectory of my life. I snuck out to meet a boy in the middle of the night, like teenagers do.
Oh, no.
And broke my leg, shattered my leg to the point of almost dying. And so I needed to get basically taken to primary children's and have a blood transfusion, and ended up starting high school late and just ended up starting high school with a near-death experience and just kind of changing all of my goals to say, well, dang, I was so interested in
Yeah.
athletics. Now what am I going to do? But kind of ended up taking me even in with like a new group of friends. And I ended up starting to really like journalism. And so I ended up being the editor in chief
Mm-hmm.
of the newspaper at Alta High, and just really loved that. I ended up being like, okay, I'm going to be a journalist. So
Yeah.
I decided to go to Westminster College to be a journalist. Got my undergrad in communication and was also the editor in chief of the newspaper there. But
Hmm.
as you know, in the 90s and 2000s, journalism was kind of in a weird place. It was like
Yeah.
kind of going digital, and it was like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I just had some mentors in the field that were kind of like, maybe you should do something.
Yeah.
um,
I remember people saying like newspapers are never going away. You're crazy if you think that people don't want to hold a newspaper and deliver a newspaper, and that's long gone now.
yeah, and I kind of felt that back then because I was like so immersed in it, right? Like I had been an editor
Yeah.
in chief in high school and then in college. And I mean, I was
Mm-hmm.
like immersed in all of these people that were writing for the Salt Lake Trib at the time. And I mean, people were pretty candid that like the field was just very weird. It was like hard to
Mm-hmm.
make money in it, but it was like fun because it's your passion, right? And you're interviewing all these really cool people. And if you're really into
Yeah.
politics or like political science, it's kind of a great field. But I had been working for 1
Mm-hmm.
800 Contacts at the time. Um, and I was their marketing administrative assistant. And
Okay.
in that role, I was like learning everything about marketing. And I was able to see all forms of marketing in that position because I was able to see like, broad scale, whether it was TV, even print back in the day. I was seeing email, I was seeing, website optimization,
Mm-hmm.
brand lift studies. And, we were spending millions of dollars on TV at 1 800 Contacts. And so it was
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like a cool job to have in college. And I had an insanely awesome mentor that I feel like just totally changed the trajectory of my life at 1 800 Contacts. And um, I think that I just decided like, I'm really enjoying this marketing thing. And so um, I decided to end up just staying in marketing, and I ended up getting my MBA. And when I got my undergrad, the mentor, he was like, "You choose. You decide what
Mm-hmm.
type of marketing you want to do in this department. You have a role here. You can literally get whatever job you want." So I
Wow.
said, "Well, I really like connecting with people." Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought like affiliate marketing just seemed fun. I think any
Yeah.
college student would be like, "Oh, you get to go to these events and you get to just network with a lot of people, and you get to go to
Mm-hmm.
Vegas for these conferences." So I started in
Yeah.
affiliate marketing there, and we had like 3,500 affiliates at the time,
Oh
which was
wow.
absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Um, but I ended up just really loving programmatic through some other jobs that I was an affiliate for like 10 years. And then I worked on the publisher side as well. So I went and worked for like a
Mm-hmm.
cashback type company. And then I ended up working for this agency called Rakuten that did affiliate marketing, programmatic, paid search, and just kind of full funnel advertising. And they also did
Mm-hmm.
multi-touch attribution. And they
Mm-hmm.
suggested like which budget to put into which area of marketing to get the most amount of revenue out of it. And I ended up falling in love with programmatic at that time. And so that's why I am where I'm at.
That's crazy. What an awesome story. I want to dig in just a little bit to some of those things. So you don't have to go into details about the broken leg, but tell me sort of like the feelings that you had. I've talked to some other people who had like this grandiose goal of where they wanted to be, and then something, medical or whatever it was. There's multiple people I've interviewed who didn't get into being a fighter pilot because of their eyesight. And like talk about the feelings you had when you're like, hey, I'm going to be a superstar basketball player, broken leg. Now what do I do? Like, how did you you get out of that and take it to the next level?
You know, I wonder that all the time because I have kids now, and like one of my passions in life is like, how do I help them build resilience, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I mean, it required a lot of resilience. You know, I had to I was in physical therapy for a whole year, you know, rehabbing my
Wow.
leg, and it took me a full year to start running again. So,
Mm.
I mean, that requires a lot of resilience. I think is when we're younger, we probably have more
Mhm.
resilience. Um,
Mhm.
but I think it was probably just like, what else am I gonna do? You know, it's like
Yeah.
I was on a lot of medication. I remember being on just, like, a lot of medication. It was
Mhm.
kind of before the time where they stopped giving people, like, Lortab and, like, you know, all those kind of hardcore medications. Like, I'm super grateful that I didn't have, like, an addictive personality,
Yeah.
because, I mean, I really don't even remember 2 or 3 months of my life because I was on so much medication.
Mm.
Um, but I remember, like, my grades were just really bad during that time because I was on so much medication.
Mhm.
And it was really just a matter of, like, tons of physical therapy, staying on top of it, and then just kind of weaning yourself off of that medication and just taking it step by step and day by day. And, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
I still feel like my leg is still messed up. Like, I can't snowboard like a typical person would be able to
Mhm.
do, or, you know,
Yeah.
but I mean, I still was snowboarding in my 20s and stuff. I mean, I ran a half marathon, and, you know, it's
Nice.
just a matter of like having that resilience, you know?
Do you feel like there are things in your life leading up to that that gave you that resilience, or was that the moment when you had to learn about resilience on your own?
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, my parents were divorced at a very young age. I was 3 when they were divorced, and I think that you have to
Mhm.
develop a certain amount of resilience even when you're 3 years old to deal with something like that. Um,
Yeah.
and so, you know, with that came a lot of just, you know, having 2 households and just dealing with that type of emotion. And I reflect on this a lot lately because I like
Mhm.
doing a lot of like inner child work right now. And
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned meditation and journaling, so I imagine that that comes up a lot.
Yeah, and I'm just like, you know, I think, you know, we don't think about how much that puts a child through going
Mhm.
through divorce at a super young age. But I
Yeah.
do think that that helped me a lot with resilience, and, you know, even just moving from Cottonwood Heights to Sandy, I think builds
Mhm.
resilience because you have to make new friends, and, um, you know, it's all those little things that you deal with in life.
Yeah, for sure. Tell me a little bit about the mentor. Did you said that you had a mentor that helped quite a bit? Was that the one at 1-800-CONTACTS? Was that did you have one before
Yeah.
that?
He is the one that I had at 1-800 Contacts. He was amazing. He actually ended up passing away while I was there.
Oh my
And that
goodness.
was another thing that I had to be resilient and get through because he actually committed.
Oh.
And so that was a super, I mean, super, super challenging thing that I had to deal with
Mhm.
in life. Um, and I mean, he was the type of person that would build anyone up in life.
Mhm.
Anyone that worked with me in that marketing department at 1-800 Contacts would tell you he was like cream of the crop, most positive, amazing person in the world. Um, and
Mm.
would literally give, you know, the shirt off his back to anybody. So
Yeah.
that was another situation where I just really had to build resilience and fight through just some really tough times to get through that pain.
My goodness. Mental health is a big passion of me. I behind me you can see a children's book I wrote around mental health for my daughter, and I've had multiple family members commit, and that's tough. So I'm sorry you had to go through that. It's never an easy thing, especially for somebody that you look up to so much. And it's hard in, like, speaking of mental health a little bit, if we dive into that, like, sometimes it's hard to really see who has problems and who doesn't. There's a really popular European commercial that I see on social media all the time that shows two guys going to a soccer game, and one of them looks kind of sad and down, the other one's up cheering and happy, and it shows one game after another, and then the final game, the guy who's not happy comes and sits down by himself and brings a scarf and puts it down on the next one, and the message is, sometimes you don't know, sometimes it's hard to see the signs of mental health issues. So
For sure. I think there's a lot of happy depression that goes on. Like, I think people put a smile on their face when
yeah.
they're depressed. And I think I mean, that experience, my mentor, who was like the most positive person I've ever known in my life, to do
Mm-hmm.
that, it really helped me have a passion for, um, mental health as well, because I feel like there's a lot of like silent depression that goes on. And so it's just so
Yeah.
important to just check in on people, like even if they are that happy friend. Um,
Yeah.
just make sure that you're still saying like, how are you doing? And, going on walks with them, and, really
Mm-hmm.
trying to get them to open up, because a lot of times, I think it was like a Robin Williams quote or something. A lot of times it's like the happy friends um
Yeah.
that end up doing that, sadly.
Dang. In what ways? Yeah, in the beginning, you mentioned that you would be willing to help maybe some females who were needed some direction or counseling or whatever.
Or
In what ways did this mentor help you become the person you are today, like that, willing to reach out and help people in need?
Oh, I mean, that was just like who he was. Like from the minute I talked to him, he was just, I mean, this guy was, coaching the Juan Diego soccer team, and then he was managing a team of like 20 people at 1-800 Contacts. And then if I told him I had an art show at Westminster College, he would show up. You know,
Man,
like
just a
he
good
just
guy.
made time for the people that he cared about, no matter how
Yeah.
busy he was, and um it's like the same thing where it's like just trusting your people too.
Mm-hmm.
Like he just, as long as his people in his department were doing what they were expected of, and like they were, fulfilling on their accountabilities, like he would let them kind of run free. And if you, were kind of going above and beyond, I mean, you could have any
Mm-hmm.
position you wanted in that team. And I feel like that's a mentor, right? Like somebody who's like, if you're excelling, you can excel further, and just kind of helping you keep going to that next level.
Yeah. So a lot of our listeners are business owners that are listening for some tactical pieces. We're not getting into the tactical quite yet, but for those who are listening, um, what is programmatic advertising? I think that I think it's kind of a newer term, right?
Yeah.
And so before we dive into what you do and everything, I want them to sort of understand what it is. So help
Yeah.
us understand exactly what that means.
A lot. It's so funny because I've been doing programmatic advertising for 10 years, and it
Mm-hmm.
feels like, and it actually has been around for longer than people think. And it still feels like people just really don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But programmatic advertising is literally just like highly targeted advertising within your customer persona. So it's not just like spray and pray advertising. It's just highly
Okay.
targeted advertising on TV, radio, native advertising, display advertising, and video advertising. And it's not necessarily within the walled gardens. Like
Mm-hmm.
the walled gardens meaning Facebook, Google, TikTok, X,
Mm-hmm.
formerly known as Twitter. Um,
Mm-hmm. You have to
so
say that, right?
yeah, it's like the open internet. It's any publisher, any app on your, connected television, your Samsung smart TV. It's any
Yeah.
app, any publisher. It's finding those users wherever they're at on those
Okay.
publishing
So when somebody says paid advertising, that's
websites.
a small, very small piece of programmatic. Is that right?
Yeah, like I mean, you can buy programmatic inventory. Um, I mean, it's hard because people confuse it, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
Google is basically like they're a monopoly, right? And then you
Mm-hmm.
can also buy Amazon. You can buy programmatic inventory on Amazon. You can buy programmatic inventory on Facebook. You can buy programmatic inventory on Google, but they only work with a certain amount of publishers. So like Google
Okay.
only works with like 20 to 30% of publishers.
Mm.
And then Facebook's only one website, right? So if you want more reach, you really need to go to the open internet to access all of the publishers and all the apps that are out there. So, like, somebody can go to Hulu and they can just buy inventory on Hulu, or they can go directly to Roku and they can buy inventory just on Roku. But the benefit of running with programmatic advertising through a company like ours is we can get you on. So, what we do is we say, okay, what's your customer persona, right? So let's
Mm-hmm.
say it's like people who make over $500,000 who are real estate investors or whatever it is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, like that's a very, very targeted audience, right?
Yeah.
You don't know if that targeted audience is going to be just watching Hulu. They're probably not just
Yeah.
watching Hulu. They're probably, on their smart TV watching a ton of apps like Peacock, Fubo TV, um, you know, Paramount Plus, they're
Yeah.
probably watching on a ton of different apps. So it's like instead of guessing where they're at, it's better to just say, okay, here's my customer persona, go find them where they're at. And it's also cheaper to
Mm-hmm.
do that because,
Okay.
like, if you go to Roku, they're going to have a minimum. Hulu's going to have a minimum, and all these different places are going to have minimums. And
Mm-hmm.
it's cheaper to just say, here's my customer persona. Now you tell me what apps they're on or what websites they're
Gotcha.
on, and then how those are going to perform.
Okay. That's great. I wanna dive into that on the tactical a little bit more.
Yeah.
But let's go from let's figure out like what are you currently working on that like gets you up in the morning? What is it that keeps you up at night because you're so excited about? What are some things that you're working on that would just be awesome to share?
Yeah. So I mean, the things that I love about my job is I really love helping advertisers understand like how to measure full funnel results because
Mhm.
and it's honestly super challenging and it's becoming more and more challenging with cookies going away and everything.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I was gonna talk about, like, in 2024 that is, like, a really challenging thing is cookies are going away, which makes pixel tracking, means pixel tracking
Mhm.
is going away. And
Yep.
marketers, for the last 20 years, as long as I've been in marketing, have been somewhat spoiled to know that kind of where everything's coming from.
Yeah.
But I have a passion no matter whether it's through cookie environments or wherever it is to help advertisers understand, you know, how to see a lift with the advertising
Mhm.
that they're running. That's what's fun for me. I think it's challenging, but it's fun.
Yeah. So if we were to get into the tactical a little bit, I think there's a lot of people that I've interviewed around social media and SEO and a couple other areas where they can give some tactical um, advice, and it's fairly simple for the business owner to just go and sort of implement that stuff. It seems like your area is a little bit more difficult for
Yeah.
them to do it, right? So is there tactical pieces that's like, here's what you can do, but really beyond that, it's beneficial for you to come to me and here's what we'll do for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about this because I know, what your type of agency and your company says it's right. It's like hire or teach people so that they can do it on their own, right?
Yeah.
And I totally believe in that. I think programmatic is a little challenging because you do kind of have to hit minimums on certain demand side platforms, and I think there are some companies that literally cannot meet those minimums. And so
Mhm.
they have to come to an agency like ours to run programmatic because they just, first of all, they don't have the team that understands programmatic to run it. They can't hit the minimums on some of these demand side platforms. And so it's just
Mhm.
in their best interest to come work with us.
Yeah.
Um, but I think like through working with us, they could decide if they wanted to make those decisions for their company. Um,
Mhm.
and, you know, I've worked with a lot of, like, we partner with a lot of agencies. So we partner with a lot of like SEO and PPC agencies um, and so what we do is we will do like omni-channel type calls to like help
Mhm.
the client understand like this is how programmatic fits with all of these other strategies, right? So
Okay.
I
Mhm.
don't think that like we definitely are an education type agency. Like we want to educate them,
Yeah.
but there might not be a way for them to literally programmatically buy unless they
Themselves. Yeah.
hit certain minimums. So
Okay. So then as far as like tactical advice,
Mhm.
yeah, let's talk about that. Do you have tactical advice for them, or is it more of like, here's how you choose the right agency, or where do they start if they want to get into programmatic?
Yeah. So I mean, I would say like if they're already running like paid search, SEO, um, they've already got kind of like a Facebook, right? They've already got a
Mm-hmm.
strategy for marketing, then they're
Mm-hmm.
probably ready for programmatic. Like I wouldn't ever recommend somebody to just like dive directly into programmatic if they don't first of all have like a very good working website
Okay.
and that they're happy with that
Yeah.
like tracks leads very well and orders very well. And they should have, some other like lower funnel strategies going. Like at
Mm-hmm.
minimum a brand campaign on paid search, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
we run TV ads and a lot of times people will come to us and be like, I want to run programmatic. And we're like, well, we recommend you have at least a branding campaign live on paid search because think
Mm-hmm.
about what people do with TV advertising. They literally can't click on it, right? So they're
Yep.
either going to go to social media and search for the brand, or they're going to go to paid search and they're going to search for the brand, or they're going to go on YouTube and search for the brand after they see the ad.
Yeah.
So it's one of those situations where collaborating with other agencies is a really good thing for programmatic. If like we don't run paid search, SEO,
Mm-hmm.
or Facebook at Above the
Mm-hmm.
Fold. So I would recommend like if the client is already working with an agency for paid search or SEO or Facebook to um like bring us in with them. We work really well with
Mm-hmm.
those types of agencies. And then we strategize really well to say, here's kind of what your upper funnel campaigns are doing and how they're driving lift for those lower funnel strategies. So it's more of like, let's look at the ad spend holistically versus
Mm-hmm.
a siloed approach because sometimes clients will come to us and they'll be like, should we run paid search or should we run programmatic? And we're like, well, actually, we recommend that you run both
Yeah.
because they affect each other. So I'm really hoping that marketers move more towards this holistic approach and not
Mm-hmm.
only not only holistic, but saying maybe we should put a little bit of budget at the top of the funnel or, in TV or audio or podcasts or, upper funnel customer persona targeting to then drive lift in the bottom of the funnel. Because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times what happens is they'll only run budget at the bottom of the funnel and they're struggling to gain market share or they're struggling to grow. And that's because they're not hitting those net new users.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just say like, make all of your agencies work together, look at all the data together, have synergy and collaboration between all of them, and, just be open minded regarding like where your budgets are. And I think there's like a bad taste in people's mouth to say, like, it's just prospecting spend or it's just like awareness spend. But I
Yeah.
think it actually affects the lower funnel strategies more than people think. I mean, I see it all the time that when they turn on a TV campaign that it'll affect their direct traffic and their organic search traffic and their paid search traffic. So it's really kind of like a soccer team and a team effort to get like
Hmm.
those goals in the door, those leads and those sales in the door.
I think that's super useful to know for these business owners, because a lot of people, I've had clients come to me who are like, I want you to build me a website. I don't have anything online. Build me a website. And they're like, what's the fastest way to get traffic? Can I just give you money and you can do, paid advertising and just get me traffic and conversion? Like, looking at it, like you said, holistically, looking at the SEO, the paid advertising, the programmatic, the email marketing, like everything on the digital side,
Yeah.
it should play well together, right? And I don't know what the data is for every industry, but I know the last company I worked for, we had data showing, I mean, this was 5 years ago, so it's could be dated, but we had data showing that it took at a minimum 12 touches
Oh yeah.
to our website before somebody converted, right? So that was like somebody come through SEO one time and then Facebook sometime and direct sometime and SEO another time, like 12 times before they would actually take the interaction that we would want them to take. And that wasn't necessarily even a purchase at that point. It
Yes.
could have been, whatever the campaign was. But so from a business owner standpoint, looking at this, like, make sure that you do have that top of funnel. I think this is your advice. Make sure you have that top of funnel stuff like
Yeah.
nailed in. Make sure you have your SEO and your email marketing all in social media. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, but targeted top of funnel spend. Like
Yeah,
you don't want to just like spray and pray the whole world. You want to make sure it's
for sure.
targeted. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then they take it from there and it goes all the way down. And then, halfway through and down is where your bread and butter is, where you can take all that data and say, here's where you can benefit the most. Right.
Yes.
And they need all of that, because if you're going to advertise on Hulu, like I see advertisements on Hulu or Max or whatever when I'm watching shows, and some of them, like I can tell, like, well, I'll give you one example. I'm pretty good at tuning them out right now because we've had commercials our whole life.
Yeah.
That's us, right? I'll get on my phone, I'll do something while the commercial's going. There's
Yeah.
one commercial that no matter what my kids are doing, if they're watching TV, if they're doing anything else, and on my phone, when I'm watching, Max, for example, we constantly get Charmin Ultra ads with the little blue bears that are
Yes.
talking about tearing it off and wiping yourself. My kids will stop everything they're doing to come and watch those commercials.
Aw.
And because of that, I remember,
There's-
yeah. So I remember those commercials. I don't remember a lot of others, but but I see them over and over and over and over and over and over. And
Yeah.
then if I want it, then I'll go and do more research on it.
Well, and think about it. You're gonna remember an ad that speaks to you too. Like I remember my husband still, I swear, doesn't even really understand what I do for work. Because like I can barely even explain programmatic to so many people, right? It's a complicated
Yeah.
topic. But I
Yeah.
remember we got an ad for something having to do with like my business because I was the target audience. And he was like, wow,
Yeah.
like that ad was really targeted to you. I'm like, yeah. And you pay attention to that, right? So it's
Hmm.
just important, especially if you're paying like the higher amounts for TV spend, to just make sure you're really, really targeting the right customer. And then
Yeah.
they'll hear that message and be like, "Oh my gosh, like I am in the real estate investment audience and, like that really speaks to me, you know?" So,
Hmm.
I would also say like if they have like an in-house team and they're not really into working with agencies, but like they don't know what programmatic is or what it means or whatever, I wouldn't feel like super worried about hiring a programmatic company to just teach
Hmm.
you about it for a little while. There's some different like self-service platforms and stuff that are out there on the market. And I think people like, first of all, they don't even understand programmatic and then they're gonna go use like a self-service platform. I think that's kind of dangerous. I think the platforms are kind of expensive, and I think they do have, like, lower quality inventory. So I
Hmm.
wouldn't be like, I know everybody just despises agencies and everything, but I think sometimes they can be a benefit for teaching you about a topic you don't know, and they can be an extension to your team in an instance where you're trying to learn about a certain thing that, you
Yeah.
potentially could then go do later on, you know?
Yeah, I think that there is in some areas there is a like a negative connotation around agencies, and it's unfortunate that there are agencies out there that have put that bad taste in their mouth. But
Yeah.
I also think I have two questions for you, and I want to come back to the to this one. So let me say it out loud so I don't forget it. Um, how much should people set aside in budget? And I know this is super broad, so don't answer this yet. But how much should they set aside in budget before they're ready to come and talk to an agency like you? So that's one. Um, but before we get to that, now I'm blanking on the question. Oh, I should have said the first one first.
Well, they can address that one and maybe you'll remember it.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
f For that one, we recommend, like, going into a certain market first just so that we can show the lift, in, like, Google Analytics or your CRM or whatever platform you're in. And we don't recommend, like, less than $5,000 per market for TV.
Okay.
And we want there to be, like, some good lift so that we can move into some different markets ultimately after, like, 3 months. And that's just
Mm-hmm.
for TV. I mean, for other areas of the business, like, we do run just a lot of display or native or video campaigns, and video would be anything outside of YouTube's platform that would be on,
Mm-hmm.
like, Fox News or CNN or any place that has video inventory.
Mm-hmm.
And those campaigns can perform really well too. Um and Google's gonna be getting rid of some of their targeting, with the whole cookie depreciation thing. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if people are still looking to do, like, highly targeted audiences on display and native and video, like, programmatic will still be able to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
those ones, I wouldn't recommend going less than, like, 3,000 a month for those type of ad formats, and you can get, more national presence with those, but for TV, I do recommend going on more of, like, a let's test a market with, like, a 5,000 budget, see if you like that performance, and then expanding into other areas. Well, I was
Good.
gonna say with CTV also, you can do a lot of capitalization on, like, the completed viewers of the TV ad. And you can serve them display ads and video ads and have, like, an omni-channel approach to the campaign, which
Mm-hmm.
tends to perform really, really well.
Nice. Are there specific industries where programmatic works better than others?
I would say that, I mean, it works for every industry, right? But I would say, like, the one that I have the hardest time, like, understanding the value of programmatic just because I think they've been so used to metrics in, like, Google
Mm-hmm.
Analytics and, remember Omniture, purchased by
Mm-hmm.
Adobe?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think, like, and I come from this background, so that's why.
Mm-hmm.
So 1-800 Contacts was an e-commerce company.
Mm-hmm.
E-commerce companies in general, I think, have really struggled, like, with programmatic because I think they really wanna see, like, when does a TV ad equate into an order? Or you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like, it's really not that simple, like you said, it takes, 11 and sometimes 20 to 25 touch points
Yep.
before somebody converts. And so a lot of times with e-commerce companies, they've just been so used to the numbers, like every single ad format leading directly to an order, that it's challenging with programmatic to say, we're for sure that this TV ad led to this exact sale. Because a lot of times it's like a soccer team, right? Where the
Mm-hmm.
TV ad and then the Facebook ad and then the paid search ad all works together. And then guess what's at the bottom right before the goalie? The power forward is always Google paid search. And it's always going to
Mm-hmm.
take all the attribution. So e-commerce companies just, I've had a hard time, I guess, explaining this concept as well
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. It's not always a one-to-one, one click, one purchase type of a
Yeah.
thing, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. So let's say I'm a company and I come to you and say I'm interested. I have the budget that we've talked about. You're good with it. What does our relationship look like over the first couple of months? And let me add like a sub question to that. What I'm wondering is some agencies you can just say, here's my information, go run with it. Other agencies, and like in PR, for example, you have to know the story, the tone, the brand. You have to give videos, you have to give pictures, all of that to the PR agency, and then they run with it. How
Yeah.
much is hands on versus hands off, and does it change over time for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, the main components of what we need are, what kind of creative do you want to run? And we do creative in house. So, it's really just a matter of, like, what creative do you want to run? And like, do they have their logos and their brand assets and things like that? And just getting that
Mm-hmm.
together. And then just making sure that tagging's set up correctly is kind of a big thing in the beginning. Just, you know, I think this isn't going to be as big of an issue with like the cookie depreciation thing because
Mm-hmm.
I don't think tags are even going to work, to be honest with you. Um,
Right.
but we've tried to set up as many tracking tags as we can just because people have been so reliant on tracking. So we have
Yeah.
that. We want to make sure their customer persona is locked down and their targeting is locked down. But after that, it's really just a matter of like, we have the campaigns going and we're setting up calls bi-weekly to just make sure that the performance is there. And if it's
Mm-hmm.
not, we just test other types of audiences. So maybe, I have had some clients that are like banks that have 10 different customer personas, right? And you can
Mm-hmm.
only really start with one if you've got like a $5,000 budget and you want to go into one
Yeah.
market. You really can only start with one customer persona. So maybe we test that customer persona. It's not performing as well as we want. It's not showing as much lift as we want. So we go on to like customer persona number 2 to see if that drives
Mm-hmm.
the lift and the goal that we want. So there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of like ongoing optimization on these biweekly calls to say what's working, what's not, what creative is working, what's not, and doing a lot of A/B testing surrounding that. But yeah, that's kind of what it looks like.
Okay. So do you feel like I've interviewed some people in the past with agencies that are very specific to Facebook ads, and they start out really wide and then they test A/B test all the way until they come up with like what they call a master ad or a master video. Do you
Mhm.
feel like you could do the same thing in your area where it's like, okay, with a bank you have 10, let's start with one, you can get it all the way down to a master, and then you do the next one and get to a master, and then at that point, let's say you have all 10 of them running fairly well with little optimization here and there. Do you have to change it every quarter? Do you have to change it, like, does it just depend on the data? What does that look like?
Really depends. Like I have one client that they had like a tax strategy at the end of the year last year. We ended up
Mm-hmm.
changing their creative weekly because we
Mm,
did kind of like a countdown strategy towards the end of
yeah.
the year and it performed so well. So I really take it on a case by case basis regarding like what kind of different sales or like cutoff dates for taxes, for example, are going on. Like each client is so
Mm-hmm.
different. And I don't think the creative strategy is different for every single client. Like for B2B, it might be more of like we're targeting some different industries and we're trying different industries. So maybe we're trying like an industrial industry versus like healthcare industry, right? And you're testing
Mm-hmm.
a couple of different creatives within those industries. Whereas like e-commerce might be we're testing a bunch of different coupons. So every
Yeah.
client is just so different. And the thing about our agency is we take each client their reporting platform and
Mm-hmm.
our strategy and we just come up with like how does your reporting need to have a lift? And we come up with like a unique strategy for each client.
So some clients it could kind of go towards the like master that works for a while, but it's kind of a case by case basis. Sometimes it's weekly, some kind.
We always have an evergreen live that's like the winner, I think is what you're
Yeah.
going.
Uh-huh. Yep.
No, it's like but that's like an ongoing creative. That's the winner.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But there's definitely seasonal creative that tends to honestly be better performing that
Yeah.
we recommend that the client gets up as much as possible because it tends to perform better than the evergreens. And we
Mm-hmm.
also have kind of a strategy in that with like publishers as well, where you start with a wide net and you also like take out publishers that aren't performing as well from the get go.
Well, Jessica, you seem like you're very passionate and knowledgeable about your stuff, which is pretty awesome. What advice do you have about for up and coming um, women who are maybe going through similar things that you went through, struggles, and you know the stuff that we've already talked about? What advice do you have for them if they're going through that right now to help get them out of that to where you're currently at? Because hindsight's always 2020. It's easier to look back and say, well, I'm glad I went through that and that's why I went through it. But when you're in it, it's tough, right? So what
Yeah.
advice do you have for them?
Wow. I mean, whew, this is a big topic, right? Women, we take on the load, right? We take on the load, the mental load, all the different loads, mental, emotional. So it's tough, you know. I mean, I don't want to be like a what is it called? I don't want to be like a downer or anything, but women, we
For
take on
sure. Yeah.
a lot of things in life, but I don't think that that needs to be something that's like, "Oh, I can't have a career," right? Because, like,
Hmm.
for me, I mean, I tried to be a stay-at-home mom. I gave it a good try, and, like, I just really love the mental stimulation from having a career, and I don't think that you should be ashamed of that. I think you should, if you want to have a career, like, go after it, and if you have
Yeah.
something that you're passionate about, like, find a mentor to help you, learn more about the topic that you're interested in and like try to I mean, I personally think college helps to get you in the
Hmm.
door in places. I know certain people are like, "Oh, um you can just get experience." And I think you still can just get experience too. But
Yeah.
I think college is really helpful in the sense that it helps you understand if like you can set a goal for yourself and you can reach that goal. Um
Yeah.
and I think it also kind of helps you understand, like, what things you're interested in. So, it's like,
Hmm.
I mean, I went into college thinking I was gonna be a journalist, and then I ended up finding an interest in marketing, so I think college is really important for that to say, like, well, maybe you go into college for computer science and you're like, "Wow, I really hate this," and then you learn that you like business. So, I
Hmm.
would say, like, just don't, like, close your mind and always be, like, continually learning and opening your mind to new areas, and definitely finding a mentor helps. So,
Yeah.
I know that there's a bunch of different mentoring companies. I can't remember the names of them, but it seems like they're kind of popping up all over the place. So,
Yeah.
um, I would just like either find like a college professor or like I mean even somebody on TikTok or something and just,
Hmm.
find somebody that can help you get to that next level.
Somebody maybe who's been there, who's been
Yeah.
where you want to be, right? And
Yeah, I
so,
mean, do an interview
um,
even. Like, I had a college student ask me if they could interview me
hmm,
about, online advertising the other day. I'm like, "Yes." Like, do as many
yeah,
interviews as you possibly can to figure out what you wanna do,
yeah,
because 'cause you'll probably be doing it for at least, 10 years or something.
hmm,
So try to figure out what it is you really want to do and interview a lot of people. And those interviews will probably even open up doors for you potentially for jobs.
yeah, absolutely. Great advice. So find a mentor. Be flexible and able to adjust and pivot where needed. Um, don't be ashamed of doing more than what society says you should do.
Yeah.
If you want to be a stay-at-home mom, be a stay-at-home mom. If you want to be a stay, if you want to do both, be a mom and work. Do both, and don't feel bad about it. Right? Like if
And
for
also
all the
like
guys out there, if you've if you've ever if you like, I have 4 kids, and like I've sent my wife to San Francisco to see some family for a week, and like after that week of the 4 kids, and this was when they were younger too, which was even harder than it is now, the appreciation factor just goes so much higher for the amount of work that a mom does, and understanding that moms do that and try to run a business like you, Jessica, or try to have a job. Like, so much respect for you guys. So much respect.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I would also say for like women who are doing this right now, who are working and they have kids, I would say like I've been regularly in therapy, like speaking of mental health, I've been
Yeah,
regularly in therapy for over a year. And I would just say like you don't have to do it by yourself.
for sure.
Like it's okay to get help. It's okay to talk to somebody and it sometimes feels good to, like, get things off your chest with, like, a third party who doesn't know you. I also am,
Yeah,
like, a huge fan of hiring mentors, and business coaches. I mean, I've hired Dale Majors, and I have a business coach, right now, and I just think, like, always pushing yourself and getting mentors and business coaches and like even therapists. I feel like they're like a part of your team, right? That's just keeping
Mm-hmm.
you on track. And you don't have to do it alone. Like you have a support system around you. You just have to reach out and ask for help.
Yeah, I would love to get rid of the negative stigma around therapists. I listen to like Ed Milet and like all of these bigger podcasters. Every single one of them have a therapist. Like there's nothing to be ashamed of,
No,
and it's good for you.
really just somebody to just get stuff off your chest. You don't have
Yeah,
to have like a major problem to have a
right.
therapist. Even if you do
Yep.
have a major problem, that's okay too. But it's just
Yeah.
nice to have like a third party that you can talk to and get things off your chest.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me about the future of programmatic. Where do you see the next couple of years going for your industry?
Oh wow, it's gonna be fun to watch. There is a lot going on with Google and cookie
Hmm.
depreciation. I mean, they just announced phasing out third-party cookies for
Yep.
1% of users, which is actually 30 million people.
That's huge.
And nobody knows if they're in that group, right? But
Yeah.
it's interesting because with that, like we all saw this already. Safari did this, I think a year ago or something. Um and so cookie depreciation has already happened with the Safari browser.
Hmm.
And I think
Hmm.
we all noticed that with like Facebook when we couldn't target iOS users anymore and all the tracking in Facebook, started dropping off. All the targeting started dropping off.
Hmm.
Um, and like you can really only target broad audiences for the most part. Like you can't do a lot of pixel tracking. You kind of have to use like video views and engagement metrics on Facebook. I think Google's going to kind of head towards that route. Like I don't think you're going to be able to do retargeting anymore in Google. I think the audience targeting within there is going to be limited.
Hmm.
And I think the cool thing for programmatic is we're still going to be able to do a lot of that because programmatic has kind of been forward thinking with a lot of this stuff for many years. And the Trade Desk, which is one of the major DSPs, they came out with something called UID 2.0. Have you ever heard of it?
Mm-mm.
Unified ID 2.0. So it's basically like a unique identifier that identifies me or you in a private way. And it makes it so that like all of our data is encrypted and hashed,
Hmm.
like our
Okay.
PII data is hashed.
Yeah.
So they have already been doing that for like 5 years. The Trade Desk has been
Hmm.
doing that. So they already kind of have a solution for cookie depreciation. And so we're still going to be able to target your customer persona through programmatic and run TV and radio and
Nice.
video, display and native. And so I think that's a cool part of the future for programmatic. But I think
Hmm.
what's still kind of like unsure is like what Google's solution is going to be.
Yeah.
They have this privacy sandbox. And I know that it's going to like store user data locally on your computer,
Hmm.
but I think that we're going to have a lot of learning around what that really means in
Yeah.
2024 and like what kind of targeting you're going to be able to do in Google and just how it will change things as we know it.
Hmm.
So I think programmatic will see a lift just due to the fact that Google will have like less ability to target.
Yeah.
But it'll just be interesting to see like what Google does with this privacy sandbox.
Do we have any idea the timeline for the cookie depreciation?
So I mean they were supposed to have it done
Mhm.
at the end of
That's what
last
I thought too. So when you said
year.
1%, I was like, I thought it was already done, but
But I just don't think they have a solution. And I think that's part
no.
of this privacy sandbox thing is I think they're taking like a segment of users and they're like, okay, well, let's play with them over here and see what we can do.
Yeah.
But the cool thing about programmatic is like we've already found a great alternative with Unified ID 2.0. We can still
Nice.
do a lot of the targeting. We also, I think AI obviously is going to be huge.
Hmm.
We already have a lot of like AI built into programmatic DSPs. So like
Hmm.
we already can like there's basically 3 identifiers, so it kind of bids off of CPC, um, you know, CTR, as well as like, CPA. So there's like 3
Yeah.
different identifiers instead of just 1, and the algorithms are
Hmm.
always like going off of like these 3 things. So I think that AI is gonna make the campaigns more effective and efficient.
Hmm.
It's gonna weed out publishers that aren't performing well. Um, and I think like AI is gonna affect everything this year. Like I just feel
Yep.
like at the end of this year, everything's gonna be different.
2023 was sort of the year where we experimented, but now there's so many things built around it. 2024 will be the year of AI
Yeah. I think it'll be
for sure.
fun to see, but it'll also be like a little
A little scary.
frightening because I mean, you see all
Yeah.
these layoffs and stuff, and you're just like, I don't know. It'll be
Yeah.
interesting. I think it'll be
Yeah.
cool.
I heard a stat the other day that said that Google has announced that in 2024 they're going to lay off 30,000 people because they don't need them because of AI. Just in 2024.
I just It's just crazy. I don't think that's the last of the layoffs for that
Yeah, I don't
reason.
either.
I think
Yep.
I think we're gonna see that happen a lot, and that's a little scary. But I think AI is gonna do cool things too. Like it's gonna make your advertising perform better.
Yeah.
But I do still think that you need a human to guide
Yeah.
what's going on because I mean especially from my perspective, like a human needs to set the goals and continually
Mhm.
monitor them and make sure that you're on track to hit them and then change the goals. And so I
Yeah.
don't foresee a time where a human won't be needed, but I could be wrong.
Sure. Yeah, I always told my team, don't fear that you're going to lose your job because of AI. Just be excited to do 5 times the amount of good for your clients
Yeah,
because you have AI to assist you as a human, right? So,
absolutely.
right.
Yeah. And I've been working
Um,
with this AI in these DSPs
yeah,
for 5 years now. So AI is
yeah,
not like super new in this
yeah,
industry, but I mean, Chat GPT is new. And,
sure.
some of this new technology is new, but AI has kind of been involved
Hmm.
in programmatic for a long time.
Nice. It's just improved over the last 5 years then.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
very cool. Okay, so let me ask you a couple questions that I ask everybody at the end of each podcast. These are my favorite questions, and I get different responses each time that I love. So, first question is if you could go back and give advice to your younger self, what would that be?
I would tell myself that everything's going to be just fine and like not to worry so much. Like, and I think we all
Yeah.
need to tell ourselves that every day because I struggle with anxiety a little bit. And so,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think that we just like everything has worked out great until this
Yeah.
point. So it's based on the track record, everything
Yeah.
will
Right.
probably turn out
Everything's great.
fine. So that's what I would tell myself.
Nice. I think that you can flip that question too, and living in the present. I've heard other podcasters ask the question: if you were imagine you're 85 years old and you were to come back and give advice to your current self right now, I imagine that advice would probably be very similar for you, right?
I'm sure. I mean, it's advice I give myself every day, and it's advice I
Yeah.
would still give my younger self, and it's probably advice I would give myself in the future.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. Second question: what books, podcasts, or leaders inspire you?
Oh, wow. I I've recently been very much into Mister Rogers. I know I'm like such a
Mm,
nerd.
yeah.
Um, but I've been making my kids like watch his show and I've been
Mm-hmm.
reading his books and I just really believe in slowing down and creating white space for ourselves and our children. And I mean, I think the show, if you watch it, you realize how much more fast paced our society has become. And how we just like don't slow down and listen to each other. And everything is just so ADD. Like
Hmm.
kids YouTube and all this stuff. It's just like so fast. I mean, you're skipping from one 3-minute video to another 3-minute video. And I
Hmm.
just love how Mr. Rogers is very emotionally intelligent. And I just think that's something that I sometimes feel our world is lacking.
Yeah, for sure.
um, and so, I mean, he's just been one of my favorite people to read about and to teach my kids about lately, and for me to also remember from my childhood, because I do remember him
Yeah.
helping me get through a lot of really hard things as a child, and I think that's just because he really gets down to our level. And I think
Yeah.
we need to do that more with each other in life, is just
Yeah.
get on that level with each other and, like, really care and have empathy with each other.
I think what you're doing with that is really important with, really being into Mr. Rogers, being into the meditation and the journaling and thinking about your childhood. Especially as a parent, I've heard advice a lot that says that just remember who you were as a kid and what you wanted and what you
Yeah.
expected from your parents. And a lot of adults say, well, I don't remember. Well, maybe you should journal. Maybe you should meditate. Maybe you should think about how you felt as a kid. Go back and watch Mr. Rogers and remember how you felt and stuff like that. So I think that's valuable, super super valuable. Well, Jessica, I really really appreciate you jumping on today. Awesome conversations in every area. I'm excited to edit this and get this out to everybody. How can everybody get a hold of you?
I'm on getabovethefold.com, and then I'm pretty active on LinkedIn under Jessica Chase, MBA, I think. Um,
Okay.
and then just Jessica at getabovethefold.com. Like, seriously, email any question. If anybody needs any help on anything, like from a mentoring, just, any perspective, just mental health, whatever you need, I'm here.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really, really
Yeah.
enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks again for joining everybody, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Sounds good.
All
Thanks.
right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening to the episode today. Listen, I know how valuable an hour of your time can be, and for you to take that busy time out of your day and spend it with us, it really means a lot. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider liking and subscribing on whatever platform you're on. And don't forget to leave a comment. Tell us what you thought about the interview. Ask us questions. Let us know what other digital topics you'd like to hear about in the future. We're here to add value to your life and elevate your digital presence online. If you'd like some help doing that, reach out to me at fireusmarketing.com. See you on the next one.